everybody. Welcome to history. Today we're going to do Unit 11, lesson number 4. It's called A Tragic Transition, and it's actually covering 2 chapters in your book, although they are very short chapters, 43 and 44. So something to think about here before we get started is take a look at these 2 people and tell me or think to yourself, you can't really tell me I guess, but think to yourself, do these 2 presidents have anything in common? And if so, what do you think it is? So you can pause the recording if you want to think about that for a moment. Okay, so Kennedy and Lincoln actually had a lot in common, and you'll see as we go through the next lesson today and tomorrow the different things they had in common. And maybe when we come back together, we can talk about that in class. So today what we're going to focus on are 2 things. We're going to talk about John F. Kennedy's presidency and his plan, which was called the New Frontier. And then we're going to talk about what happens to Kennedy. He ultimately gets assassinated, and we're going to talk about how that played out and how that affected the country. So take a moment here and pause the video, and I just want you to mentally see if you can match the picture with its description. So take a moment to do that. Okay, so you should have matched Cuban Missile Crisis here. Oops, let me go back. The I Have a Dream here. Castro and Khrushchev here, and of course JFK here. So good job if you knew all of those. Okay, so let's just talk a little bit about the presidency of John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy was a very popular president. At the time that he was elected, he was very different than previous presidents. He's a very young guy with a young wife and children, really sort of like a charismatic guy, really a good-looking guy, and he had a lot of vision for the country about how to make things better for people, how to make things fair and equal, and what he could do to improve the lives of everyday people. Now, when we talk about the Kennedy presidency, it's often referred to as Camelot. It's sort of a metaphor for how special and unique he was, and what he was trying to accomplish as president. So it was like this, sense of a perfect world, that he wanted everybody to have, everything that they needed to live a happy life. But he had many challenges during his time, and we've already talked about many of those here. He had the challenges of the Bay of Pigs, which was a failure. We talked about that the other day, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and all the while he's still trying to manage the violence and the problems that are growing in the South in regards to the Civil Rights Movement. And then, of course, the Vietnam War is still going on, and that's going to heat up as well. Accomplishments for him, well, he was many firsts. He was the youngest man to be elected president. He was the first Roman Catholic to be president. And some of the things he did was he encouraged people to get involved with service and volunteerism. He created something called the Peace Corps. That says Peach Corps. That's not right. I know that you guys love when I have all these typos. Peace Corps. And the Peace Corps is an organization where you can volunteer instead of having a job. That's your job, and you go out to places that need help. And then finally, he helped to grow the Civil Rights Movement. Okay, so the first thing I want you to do is I want you to pause the video, go to your online school, grab that list of video links for lesson number 4, and click on the first one. And I want you to listen to this. Some of you may have already heard this speech. I think I had it as an extra activity after one of the quizzes we did. But go ahead, this is just a small excerpt. Go ahead and listen to it again. So pause this recording, listen to that, and then come back. Okay, so now based on what you have learned so far, think about this question. How do you think that most people in America felt about President Kennedy at the time? Do you think that they didn't like him, he was too Catholic or too foreign? Or they loved him and his family and followed them like superstars? Or they didn't care one way or another? He was okay, but nothing different than others. What do you think? Just take a second to think about that. Well, actually, the truth is B. People loved him and his family, and they did follow them like superstars. They were kind of like the Kardashians of their time. You know, if there would have been reality television back then, I think maybe the Kennedys would have had their own show. But people were really interested in them. They really loved him, and they thought that he was like this perfect guy. And so he was very super popular. So one of his things when he became president that he wanted to do was a plan. And he named his plan the New Frontier. And as we have seen with other presidents, they all seem to have their own ideas and they have names for them. But his plan would be a continuation of something like FDR's New Deal. But he wanted to make it bigger. So he wanted to also pass civil rights bill. He wanted to cut taxes, and he wanted to start a way to get health care for all Americans. Some of these things sound very familiar to us because these are types of things that our politicians still talk about today. But other plans he had too that he was going to work on were women's rights, a national minimum wage, and he wanted to help and grow people in the inner cities and rural areas who were in poverty. So he had a lot of ideas and he really wanted to help a lot of people. Well, some people didn't like his ideas because, first of all, they cost a lot of money. And second of all, they called it socialism, and people didn't like this idea of making everybody equal. And not equal in the sense that we're talking about in civil rights. They're talking about equal in the monetary sense, like financially equal. So many of the conservative members of Congress went against him. And they spoke out against him. And in some places that caused him to lose popularity. But he was a really great speaker and a very charismatic guy. And he did encourage people. And he really thought that he was going to be able to do all of these things that he had planned out. So one of the places where he was having a little bit of trouble was in the state of Texas. The Texans were not completely on board with all of his plans, and being that his vice president came from Texas, they thought it would be a good idea for the president to make this big trip to Texas and visit the Democratic leaders there and talk to them to try to smooth things out so he could get some of these plans implemented that he wanted to do. So before he leaves on this trip, this guy that works for him, called his press secretary, gets a letter delivered anonymously. And it says, don't let the president come to Dallas. Texas is too dangerous. So unfortunately, these kind of things happen quite frequently to presidents, so they really didn't think much of it. They usually just ignore that stuff and figure some people are just a little crazy and do things like that. So they didn't think much of it, and the president and his wife traveled to Dallas. It was a beautiful day. And people lined the streets to see the president, and all the cars in his motorcade drove through the city, and it was kind of like a miniature parade. And you could see in the pictures, it was a beautiful, gorgeous day, so they drove in this convertible car and they took the top off. And Kennedy was the kind of guy that liked to get out and talk to the people. So periodically he would stop and get out and shake hands and wave at people. So this was a pretty normal thing for him. But today, November 22nd, is a date that people who lived during that time say they will never forget. And we're going to find out why. So I want you to pause this recording. Now there are 3 short videos I want you to watch, and I want you to watch them in order. So go to your video link document that's in lesson 4 in the online school. Open that up so you can get all the links for these videos and watch each one one at a time. Now, one of these is a Vimeo. I never know how to say that, but if for some reason your computer won't let you play it, you can just skip over it. It's we're covering all the material. I just thought that was an interesting video. So go ahead and do that and then come on back. Okay, so now we know what happens. Kennedy is killed, and 2 hours later, the vice president, Lyndon B. Johnson, is sworn into office as the 36th president of the United States. That's how quickly it happens when a president dies. So this is Lyndon Johnson right here. Oops, let me go back. And watch this 60-second short about him here. Grab that link off of your video list and pause your recording. Go ahead and watch that one. Okay, so that's just a little bit about Johnson, and we'll learn more about him in future lessons. So shortly after this happens, Dallas police actually catch the guy who shot Kennedy. His name was Lee Harvey Oswald, and a policeman noticed him acting strange at a movie theater, and they actually arrested him. And he was this guy, kind of a weird guy, but he had lived in Russia and Cuba and was kind of into this communism thing. And he was charged with killing President Kennedy. And a couple days later, so they arrest him, they take him off to jail. And a couple days later, they're transferring him from one jail to another. And this guy, Jack Ruby, who's like a local, sort of like a local bar owner, he comes out in the middle of this parking garage and shoots Oswald and kills him right in front of all the police. Amazing. This probably would never happen today, but it happened. So ultimately, nobody will ever know exactly why Oswald shot Kennedy, because they really never had a chance to interview him or prosecute him, because he was killed a couple days after being arrested. So the pictures here are showing this is Lee Harvey Oswald here, and this is him. Actually, somebody photographed him getting shot. This is the guy, Jack Ruby, who shot him. Or this guy here, I'm sorry, shot him. So yeah, I mean, it's crazy, right? All right, so we're going to stop there because that's a good place to stop. And, there's all these conspiracies. If you talk to your parents or your grandparents or people who lived during that time, you will hear all kinds of different conspiracies about why Kennedy was killed. Some people think it was, planned by the government. Some people think the Russians did it. But we actually will never really know because, like I said, they didn't get a chance to interview Oswald. So Kennedy is dead, Johnson is our new president, and we're going to take a break here so you can catch up on all the parts that I didn't cover in class by reading. Boy, I have another typo. Look at this. Reading. Read chapter 43 and 44. That should be 44. And complete study guide questions for chapters 43 and 44. Complete graded assignment 11.04. And that's it. If you have any questions, just let me know. You can always email me or raise your hand during class or send me a chat message and I will answer your questions. And that is it for today. Have a great day.